Australian films are incredibly special in their own way. Each one is unique, with different ideas, values, and messages it wants to convey. For further exploration of Australian values and stories, I will be examining two Australian films. First up is Animal Kingdom. The focus of this film is mainly on loyalty to family, as well as the importance of maintaining trust and faith in the people that you love. The target audience for this film is mainly Australian true crime fans and action fans. We know this because of the setting and subject matter, the Walsh Street Murders. Other Australian films released in 2010 include Tomorrow When the War Began, Beneath Hill 60, and Blame. Animal Kingdom was written and directed by David Michaud, produced by Elizabeth Watts, and edited by Luke Doolan. The director of photography was Adam Arkapaw, and it was funded with a budget of $5 million by Porchlight Films, Screen Australia, Screen New South Wales, and Fulcrum Media Finance. The structure of the film engages the audience through following a misguided protagonist, which subverts the call to adventure format by making the main character be coerced into a life of crime, giving him questionable morals and constantly putting the audience at unease in regard to his motivations and incentive. The reparations portion of the film, Act 4, takes up quite a lot of the runtime, as various characters attempt to make amends, making for a much shorter glimpse at the fifth act and new equilibrium, which is left open without a proper resolution, once again leaving the audience unsure of what is to become of the main characters. The genre of Animal Kingdom is a neo-noir crime drama. This is engaging for the audience because of the application of these themes to a local location, as well as the sustained uncertainty of how a happy ending could be reached. Animal Kingdom was shot mainly in rural Melbourne, Australia, and consists of a variety of camera techniques, but mostly uses medium close-ups to accentuate character-based interactions. Extreme long shots were used sparingly to establish locations, but for the most part, long one-roll takes were used to emphasize the incredible acting talent on display, instead of relying on quick cuts for conversations all the time. The film is also loosely based on the real-life story of the Pettingill family and Walsh Street Murders in 1988. The cast is all Australian, with a few well-known actors such as Guy Pearce, Jackie Weaver, and Joel Edgerton. This gives authenticity to the portrayal of these characters, so that they don't have to rely on stereotypically bad Australian accents from American actors. Ben Mendelsohn in particular stands out as Andrew Pope Cody, an unhinged uncle who gives it his all, executing scenes with frenzied gusto. Once again drawing attention to the protagonist, Josh Cody, who is played perfectly by James Frischville. He gives a constricted performance to emphasize the uncertainty towards the audience of his motivation and ultimate fate. The simple suburban aesthetic of the film lends itself to the set decoration and props used throughout, mainly that of common household items, along with various guns and weapons. Overall, the colour of the film varies from lighter blue and green shades to much darker scenes that feel barely lit at all. The sound design is nothing special, but there is a significant lack of a continuous score, instead relying sometimes on diegetic notes to break long silences. The score itself was created by Australian composer Anthony Partos, a specialist in blending acoustic and electric sound elements, which is used to great effect in this film. The inciting theft of a car and murder of two police officers is a great scene that has an excellent use of camera work and cinematography. The ambush is filmed intercut with creeping camera movements towards Joshua Cody at home, wrestling with the indecision over the murders he knows will occur. A very quiet build-up of the score leads to the interruption of a loud gunshot, bringing forth a secondary disruption that leads to recognition and the path to repair. Another great observation in this scene is the alternate camera angles and editing choices, which firstly focuses on the unsuspecting police officers, before switching to the attackers and then finally from a perspective further down the road as they flee the scene. The whole movie hangs on the success of conveying this event, and the final product does not disappoint. Other Australian representations in this film include the fact that it is, at its core, an Australian story, based off real-life events and people. This lesser-known story has been given more attention because of its representation in a feature-length film. There is also significant economic value in telling these Australian stories, according to a report made by Screen Australia in 2016, which helped raise awareness and funds for future workers in the Australian media industry. The second film we will study is The Hunter, released in 2011. Its Australian values focus more on history and heritage, and preservation of the past in order to protect the future. Its target audience is mainly environmentalists and fans of the 1990 book on which it is based on. Other Australian films released in 2010 include 33 Postcards, Red Dog, and Sleeping Beauty. The Hunter was written for the screen by Alice Addison, directed by Daniel Nethim, and produced by Porchlight Films, as well as Madman Entertainment, and it was edited by Roland Galloy, and the cinematography was expertly captured by Robert Humphries. It was also primarily funded by New South Wales Pictures and Screen New South Wales. The structure for this film similarly follows a morally questionable protagonist, which makes for another interesting viewing experience, because until the very end, the audience should not be sure if they want him to succeed in his mission. Act 2, or The Disruption, begins essentially from the start, as this fictional world attempts to imply the continued existence of the Tasmanian tiger. The constant unease and confusion about this plot point are acknowledged in the recognition act of the film, which lasts essentially until Martin finally shoots the still living Tasmanian tiger, in order to preserve its legacy and protect it from the evil Red Leaf Corporation. The new equilibrium in this narrative also leaves only two key survivors, as a way of punishing the protagonist for the bad things he has done, but also as a way for him to seek redemption. The Hunter can be placed in the genres of adventure, drama, and thriller. This engages the audience by visualizing the novel and changing the stereotypical nature of a likable hero, much like Animal Kingdom. The genre for this movie also explores mysterious aspects of Tasmania, such as the myth of a non-extinct Tasmanian tiger, as well as current environmental issues that continue to threaten the island state. The camera work and cinematography are particularly noteworthy in this film, expertly capturing the gorgeous Tasmanian landscape, with an excellent use of scale, usually through placing the hunter in the background to illustrate the size of the mountains he finds himself frequenting. There are also several instances of lush Tasmanian bush, interwoven with walking montages, giving good use of the areas found by the location scout. The colour scheme varies mainly from light blue and green, while also featuring several scenes that take place at night, in darkness illuminated by lights. Once again, in comparison to Animal Kingdom, the protagonist's actor, American-born Willem Dafoe, gives a closed performance, devoid of most facial expressions to give the audience more uncertainty towards his character in general, but he does do very well to convey brief moments of respite and contentment. Sam Neill is also notable among this cast, as a questionable neighbour to where Martin is staying. The cast is smaller than Animal Kingdom, giving it a more authentic rural atmosphere. The prop design is kept mostly minimal, due to the bush setting, but excellent attention to detail is given in the family home, as well as at the bar, both of which feel lived in, as well as having a good sense of history. The editing in this film is nothing great, with the exception of a few interesting jump cuts to speed up the hunter's long walks. A sense of time is constantly being moved by the editing as well, which is done with a few straight cut edits and an inferred knowledge from the audience that it is now a new day, which is obviously helped with the mostly natural lighting, a deliberate choice to accentuate aspects of the environment surrounding production. Martin's face is also constantly covered by shadows for the first half of the film, while lit more often towards the end. The Hunter also uses a comparatively small score, instead choosing to focus more on Martin's relationship with nature, with diegetic noises of him walking or resting. This is definitely an interesting choice, and it can sometimes make it harder to engage with the film as a whole, but it also reflects his mental journey back to nature, away from the distractions of a cruel and unforgiving world. The scene that I will discuss occurs at the end of the film, when Martin is faced with his decision to kill or spare the last living Tasmanian tiger. After he is killed and mourned it, he is bathed in golden light, representative of his freedom and redemption from corporate manipulation. Willem Dafoe's anguished crying is also impressive, as it is clear that he would rather let it live, but the risk was too great and the stakes too high. The sound is beautiful, a haunting orchestral piece that increases in volume before it fades into the sound of a crackling fire, a destructive but controlled piece of nature that he uses to hide the tiger from pursuing forces. Finally, Australian representations occur in this film in the form of the protagonist, an American. The character works as a surrogate for the audience, experiencing for the first time the beautiful sights and environment that Australia has to offer. While more than just a tourism ad, this film also emphasises the importance of historical preservation, something very important to the majority of Australian citizens. Social and cultural factors that influence audiences are also imperative to films, because most of the time, a movie is made to represent a message or collective ideal. Social factors are elements from society that reflect an opinion toward the movie or idea that it is representing. Cultural factors are a collection of ideas or beliefs associated with a particular group of people. Things like economic or social aspects can influence the audience based on the circumstances it was made in. Another social and cultural factor is the opinion of other people that watched the film, especially if one subscribes to a herd mentality. The Hunter received a mainly positive critical reception and earned back $1.6 million of its original budget, as well as 2 AACTA wins and 11 AACTA nominations. In comparison to this, Animal Kingdom earned back 7.2 from its budget, as well as 1 Oscar nomination, 8 AACTA wins, and 6 AACTA nominations. The media production process for any film begins with the formation and refinement of an original idea. Various screenwriters, script developments, and producers contribute creative input to tell a story or convey representations of real-life relevancy. A director is then given the narrative so that they can work with the production design team and director of photography to choose what they want the final products to look like, stylistically and in regard to tone. The director of photography would then collaborate with the lighting and set decoration team and come to agreements for a final product. Screen testing and casting follow this, which eventually gives way to filming, in which most roles are required. Once filming has concluded, the film is edited profusely, a score is produced, and the parent studio approves the film for release. A rating is given, test audiences are previewed, and the film receives a domestic release. A few of these roles are worth mentioning again, especially the writers, directors, producers, editors, screenwriters, and in particular the cinematographers. No movies would be made without the contribution of these fantastic people who worked so hard. Animal Kingdom is rated for mature accompanied audiences, recommended for ages 15 and above. This is mainly for violence, drug content, and pervasive language. This is a fair classification, because according to the National Classification Code, it should be preserved from audiences aged under 15 for violent actions. This is especially important for this film because of the local nature of this film, which makes the violence and law-breaking all the more enticing for people in Melbourne with access to the same resources. The Hunter is rated for mature audiences for coarse language and instances of violence. This is because both cases are very brief and not impactful enough to affect any viewers. In conclusion, Australian representations are very present in both films, as ways to express the unique values held by our home.